Good morning, everybody. Today is April 25th, 2025. And there we go. I wanted to make my screen a little bit shorter. Let's make sure that I'm not muted. So today I'm actually going to be reading from a book that we have on our bookshelf. And it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while is read from the bookshelf. Let me just share this out. I've never read this book before, so this will be the first time that that I'm reading it along with you. It's called The Difference Engine. It's written by William Gibson, who's author of Mona Lisa Overdrive, and Bruce Sterling, author of Islands in the Net. So I'll read the back. It's 1855. The Industrial Revolution is in full and inexorable swing, powered by steam-driven cybernetic engines. Charles Babbage perfects his analytical engine, and the computer age arrives a century ahead of its time, and three extraordinary characters race toward a rendezvous with history and the future. Sybil Gerard, a fallen woman, a politician's tart and daughter of a Luddite agitator. Edward Leviathan Mallory, explorer and paleontologist. And Lawrence Oliphant, diplomat, mystic, and spy. Their adventure begins with the discovery of a box of punched engine cords of unknown origin and purpose, cards someone wants badly enough to kill for. Part detective story, part historical thriller. The Difference Engine is the first collaborative novel by two of the most brilliant and controversial science fiction authors of our time. Provocative, compelling, intensely imagined, it is a startling extension of Gibson's and Sterling's unique visions in a new and totally unexpected direction. So I'm looking forward to this book. I'm going to read it all the way through for as many weeks as I can. Usually do a Friday broadcast, either in the morning on every Friday or in the afternoon. I started out strictly doing readings. One of the books that I started out with was a gift from a patron. So I went through that. So you can always go back and reference some of the old broadcasts that I've done in the past. And, if you're interested in hearing what I had to say in the past or what books I've written, what books I've read in the past. So I'm just going to get right to it. I may interrupt myself, which I often do when I'm doing a reading. So this book is separated into iterations. So this is the first iteration, and it's quite a few pages. I think I looked and saw that it was about 70 something pages. So I don't think I'll be able to get through all of those pages. So we'll get through the first half of the first iteration. So it's this many pages. So I don't think I'll be able to get through like the first iteration in this reading, but let's just get right into it. So I was thinking, hang on, before they do that, I was actually thinking of bringing in the maybe like some kind of image so that you guys can just look at it while I'm reading. Okay. Oh, there you go. Well, you can still see like the background of the website behind it, but that's what the book looks like. So let's go ahead and get started. First iteration, The Angel of Goliad. Okay, so already before I even start, what I like to do is they set this up like a movie set, or they set it up like a s- like a stage set, like they've set the stage. So it's going to read like a script, like a screenplay, or it's going to read like a script for the first couple of paragraphs. So first iteration, the Angel of Goliad, composite image, optically encoded by escort craft of the trans-channel airship Lord Brunel. Aerial view of suburban Cherbourg, October 14th, 1905. A villa, a garden, a balcony. Erase the balcony's wrought iron curves, exposing a bath chair and its occupant. Reflected sunset glints from the nickel plate of the chair's wheel spokes. The occupant, owner of the villa, rests her arthritic hands upon fabric woven by a jacquard loom. These hands consist of tendons, tissues, jointed bone. Through quiet processes of time and information, threads within the human cells have woven themselves into a woman. Her name is Sybil Gerard. Below her, in a neglected formal garden, leafless vines lace wooden trellises on whitewashed, flaking walls. From the open window of the sick room, a warm draft stirs the loose white hair at her neck, bringing scents of coal smoke, jasmine, and opium. Her attention is fixed upon the sky, upon a silhouette of vast and irresistible grace, metal in her lifetime having taught itself to fly. In advance of that magnificence, tiny unmanned aeroplanes dip and skirl against the red horizon, like starlings, Sybil thinks. Like starlings, Sybil thinks. The airship's lights, square golden windows, hint at human warmth. Effortlessly, with the incomparable grace of organic function, she imagines a distant music there, the music of London. The passengers promenade. They drink. They flirt. Perhaps they dance. So, this is the first time I'm reading this, so you'll have to just bear with me, okay? Um, Thoughts come unbidden, the mind weaving its perspectives, assembling meaning from emotion and memory. She recalls her life in London, recalls herself so long ago, making her way along the Strand, pressing past the crush of Temple Bar, pressing on, the city of memory winding itself about her, till by the walls of Newgate, the shadow of her father's hanging falls, and memory turns, deflected swift as light, down another byway, one where it is always evening. It is January 15th, 1855, a room in Grand's Hotel, Piccadilly. One chair was propped backward, wedged securely beneath the door's cut glass knob. Another was draped with clothing, a woman's fringed mantelet, a mud-crusted skirt of heavy worsted, a man's checked trousers and cutaway coat. Two forms lay beneath the bedclothes of the laminated maple four-poster, and off in the iron grip of winter, Big Ben bellowed, 10 o'clock. Great hoarse calliope sounds, the coal-fired breath of London. Sybil slid her feet through icy linens to the warmth of the ceramic bottle in its wrap of flannel. Her toes brushed his skin. The touch seemed to start him from deep deliberation. That was how he was, this dandy Mick Radley. She'd met Mick Radley at Laurent's Dancing Academy down Windmill Street. Now that she knew him, he seemed more the sort for Kellner's in Leicester Square, or even the Portland rooms. He was always thinking and scheming, muttering over something in his head. Clever, clever. It worried her, and Mrs. Winterhalter wouldn't have approved, for the handling of political gentlemen required delicacy and discretion, qualities Mrs. Winterhalter believed she herself had aplenty, while crediting none of that to her girls. No more dolly bopping, Sybil, Mick said. One of his pronouncements, something about which he'd made up in his clever mind. Sybil grinned up at him, her face half hidden by the blanket's warm edge. She knew he liked the grin, her wicked girl grin. He can't mean that, she thought. Make a joke of it, she told herself. But if I weren't a wicked dollymomp, would I be here with you now? No more playing bobtail. You know I only go with gentlemen. Mick sniffed, amused. Call me a gentleman, then? A very flash gentleman, Sybil said, flattering him. One of the fancy. You know I don't care for the rad lords. I spit on him, Mick. Sybil shivered, but not unhappily, for she'd run into a good bit of luck here, full of steak and taters and hot chocolate. In bed between clean sheets in a fashionable hotel, a shiny new hotel with central steam heat, though she'd gladly have traded the restless gurgling and banging of the scrolled gilt radiator for the glow of a well-banked hearth. And he was a good-looking cove, this Mick Radley, she had to admit, dressed very flash, had the tin and was generous with it, and he'd yet to demand anything peculiar or beastly. She knew it wouldn't last, as Mick was a touring gent from Manchester and gone soon enough. But there was profit in him, and maybe more when he left her, if she made him feel sorry about it, and generous. Mick reclined into fat feather pillows and slid his manicured fingers behind his spit-curled head. Silk nightshirt all frothy with lace down the front, only the best for Mick. Now he seemed to want to talk a bit. Men did, usually, after a while, about their wives mostly. But for Dandy Mick, it was always politics. So, you hate the lordships, Sybil? Why shouldn't I? Sybil said. I have my reason. I should say you do, Mick said slowly, and the look he gave her then of cool superiority sent a shiver through her. What do you mean by that, Mick? I know your reasons for hating the government. I have your number. Surprise seeped into her, then fear. She sat up in bed. There was a taste in her mouth like cold iron. You keep your card in your bag, he said. I took that number to a rum magistrate. I know. He ran it through a government engine for me and printed up your Bow Street file, rat-a-tat-tat like fun. He smirked. So I know all about you, girl. I know who you are. She tried to put a bold face on it. And who's that then, Mr. Radley? No, Sybil Jones, dearie. You're Sybil Gerard, the daughter of Walter Gerard, the Luddite agitator. He'd raided her hidden past. Machines whirring somewhere, spitting out history. Now Mick watched her face, smiling at what he saw there, and she recognized a look she'd seen before at Laurent's, when first he'd spied her across the crowded floor. A hungry look. Her voice shook. How long have you known about me? Since our second night. You know I travel with the general, like any important man. He has enemies. As his secretary and man of affairs, I take few chances with strangers. Mick put his cruel, deft little hand on her shoulder. You might have been someone's agent. It was business. Sybil flinched away. Spying on a helpless girl, she said at last. You're a right bastard, you are. But her foul words scarcely seemed to touch him. He was cold and hard, like a judge or a lordship. I'm a spy, girl, but I use the government's machinery for my own sweet purposes. I'm no copper's narc to look down my nose at a revolutionary like Walter Gerard, no matter what the rad lords may call him now. Your father was a hero. He shifted on the pillow. My hero. That was Walter Gerard. I saw him speak on the rights of labor in Manchester. He was a marvel. We all cheered till our throats were raw. The good old Hellcats. Mick's smooth voice had gone sharp and flat in a Mancunian tang. Ever hear tell of Hellcat, Sybil, in the old days? A street gang, Sybil said. Rough boys in Manchester. And Mick frowned. We was a brotherhood. A friendship youth guild. Your father knew us well. He was our patron politician, you might say. I'd prefer it if you didn't speak of my father, Mr. Radley. Mick shook his head at her impatiently. When I heard they tried and hanged him, the words like ice behind her ribs, me and the lads, we took up torches and crowbars and we ran hot and wild. That was Ned Ludd's work, girl, years ago. He picked delicately at the front of his nightshirt. "'Tis not a tale. 'Tis not a tale I tell too many. The government's engines have long memories." She understood it now. Mick's generosity and his sweet talk, the strange hints he'd aimed at her of secret plans and better fortune, marked cards and hidden aces. He was pulling her strings, making her his creature. The daughter of Walter Gerard was a fancy prize for a man like Mick. She pulled herself out of bed, stepping across icy floorboards in her pantalettes and chemise. She dug quickly, silently, through the heap of her clothing. The fringed mantelet, the jacket, the great sagging cage of her crinoline skirt, the jingling white cuirass of her corset. "Get back in bed," Mick said lazily. "Don't get your monkey up. 'Tis cold out there." He shook his head. "'Tis not like you think, Sybil." She refused to look at him, struggling into her corset by the window where frost-caked glass cut the upwashed glare of gaslight from the street. She cinched the corset's laces tight across her back with a quick, practiced snap of her wrists. "Or if it is," Mick mused, watching her, "'tis only in small degree." Across the street, the opera had let out. Gentry in their cloaks and top hats, cab horses, their backs in blankets, stamped and shivered on the black macadam, while traces of clean suburban snow still clung to the gleaming coachwork of some lordship's steam gurney. Tarts were working the crowd, poor wretched souls, hard indeed to find a kind face amid those goffered shirts and diamond studs on such a cold night. Sybil turned toward Mick, confused, angry, and very much afraid. "Who did you tell about me?" "Not a living soul," Mick said, "not even my friend, the general. And I won't be poaching on you. Nobody's ever said Mick Radley is indiscreet, so get back in bed." "I shan't," Sybil said, standing straight, her bare feet freezing on the floorboards. "Sybil Jones may share your bed, but the daughter of Walter Gerard is a personage of substance." Mick blinked at her, surprised. He thought it over, rubbing his narrow chin, then nodded. "'Tis my sad loss, then, Miss Gerard." He sat up in bed and pointed at the door with a dramatic sweep of his arm. "Put on your skirt, then, and your brass-heeled dolly boots, Miss Gerard, and out the door with you and your substance. But 'twould be a great shame if you left. I've uses for a clever girl." "I should say you do, you blackguard," said Sybil, but she hesitated. He had another card to play. She could sense it in the set of his face. He grinned at her, and his eyes slitted. "Have you ever been to Paris, Sybil?" "Paris?" Her breath clouded in midair. "Yes," he said, "the gay and the glamorous. Next destination for the general when his London lecture tour is done." Dandy Mick plucked at his lace cuffs. "What those uses are that I mentioned, I shan't as yet say, but the general is a man of deep stratagem, and the government of France has certain difficulties that require the help of experts." He leered triumphantly. "But I can see that I have you. I can see that I bore you." Sybil shifted from foot to foot. "You'll take me to Paris, Mick," she said slowly, "and that's the true bill. No sneaky humbugging. Strictly square and level. If you don't believe me, I have a ticket in my coat for the Dover Ferry. For the Dover Ferry." Sybil walked to the brocade armchair in the corner and tugged at Mick's greatcoat. She shivered uncontrollably and slipped the greatcoat on. Fine dark wool, like being wrapped in warm money. "Try the right front pocket," Mick told her, the card case. He was amused and confident, as if it were funny that she didn't trust him. Sybil threw her chilled hands into both pockets. Deep, plush, and lined. Her left hand gripped a lump of hard, cold metal. She drew out a nasty little pepperbox derringer. Ivory handle, intricate gleam of steel hammers and brass cartridges, small as her hand, but heavy. "Naughty," said Mick, frowning. "Put it back. There's a girl." Sybil put the thing away, gently but quickly, as if it were a live crab. In the other pocket, she found his card case, red Morocco leather. Inside were business cards, carte de visite with his engine stippled portrait, a London train timetable, and an engraved slip of stiff, creamy parchment first class passage on the New Common out of Dover. You'll need 2 tickets then, she hesitated, if you really mean to take me. Mick nodded, conceding the point. And another for the train from Cherbourg, too. And nothing simpler. I can wire for tickets downstairs at the lobby desk. Sybil shivered again and wrapped the coat closer. Mick laughed at her. Don't give me that vinegar fizz. You're still thinking like a dolly mop. Now stop it. Start thinking flash, or you'll be of no use to me. You're Mick's gal now, a high flyer. She spoke slowly and reluctantly. I've never been with any man who knew I was Sybil Gerard. Well, that was a lie, of course. There was the man who had ruined her. There was Charles Egremont, who had known very well who she was, but Egremont no longer mattered. He lived in a different world now, with his po-faced, respectable wife and his respectable children and his respectable seat in Parliament. And Sybil hadn't been dolly mopping with Egremont, not exactly anyway, a matter of degree. She could tell that Mick was pleased at the lies she told him. It had flattered him. Mick opened a gleaming cigar case, extracted a cheroot, and lit it in the only flare of a repeating match, filling the room with the candied smell of cherry tobacco. So now you feel a bit shy with me, do you? He said at last. Well, I prefer it that way. What I know, that gives me a bit more grip on you, don't it, than mere tin. So I'm going to stop for 1 second and fix the image because it looks kind of funny in front of the website like that. So hold on 1 sec. Let's see, there's the... difference engine. Let's try this. Oh, that's the Amazon Books. Okay, that works. Does that work? Let's see. No. I'm just trying to get an image, right? Keeps going back to the book. Well, I guess I could keep it up on the Amazon site. You know, I'm not one to promote Amazon at all, but I don't see how else I can do this. And for some reason, it's not coming up. Sorry, we're leaving in a couple of hours, and so this was sort of a last minute thing, this reading. So I'm totally not prepared. Let's see. How about thrift books? I like thrift books a lot. Does that one work? Let me share that. Sorry. Let's see. Share screen. Okay. How about that one on thrift books? I don't mind sharing thrift books. Okay, so let's get back to it. These two are meeting. He wants to take her on a trip. and get her out of the life, right? So his eyes narrowed. It's what a cove knows that counts, ain't it, Sybil? More than land or money and more than birth. Information. Very flash. All right, so I have a chat here. Let's see. Great. Sybil felt a moment of hatred for him for his ease and confidence. That's better. Pure resentment, sharp and primal, but she crushed her feelings down. The hatred wavered, losing its purity, turning to shame. She did hate him, but only because he truly knew her. He knew how far Sybil Gerard had fallen, that she had been an educated girl with airs and graces, as good as any gentry girl. Once. From the days of her father's fame, from her girlhood, Sybil could remember Mick Radley's like. She knew the kind of boy that he had been. Ragged, angry factory boys, penny a score, who could crowd her father after his torchlight speeches, or who would crowd her father after his torchlight speeches and do whatever he commanded. Rip up railroad tracks, kick the boiler plugs out of spinning jennies, lay policemen's helmets by his feet. She and her father had fled from town to town, often by night, living in cellars, attics, anonymous rooms to let, hiding from the red police and the daggers of other conspirators. And sometimes, when his own wild speeches had filled him with a burning elation, her father would embrace her and soberly promise her the world. She would live like gentry in a green and quiet England when King's steam was wrecked, when Byron and his industrial radicals were utterly destroyed. But a hempen rope had choked her father into silence. The radicals ruled on, moving from triumph to triumph, shuffling the world like a deck of cards. And now Mick Radley was up in the world and Sybil Gerard was down. She stood there silently, wrapped in Mick's coat. Paris. The promise tempted her, and when she let herself believe him, there was a thrill behind it, like lightning. She forced herself to think about leaving her life in London. It was a low, sordid life, she knew, but not entirely desperate. She still had things to lose. Her rented room in Whitechapel, and dear Toby, her cat, and there was Mrs. Winterhalter, who arranged meetings between fast girls and political gentlemen. Mrs. Winterhalter was a bawd, but ladylike and steady, and her sort was difficult to find, and she would lose her two steady gentlemen, Mr. Chadwick and Mr. Kingsley, who each saw her twice a month. Steady 10, that was, and kept her from the street. But Chadwick had a jealous wife in Fulham, and in a moment of foolishness, Sybil had stolen Kingsley's best cufflinks. She knew that he suspected her. But neither man was half so free with his money as Dandy Mick. She forced herself to smile at him as sweetly as she could. You're a rumman, Mick Radley. You know you've got my leading strings. Perhaps I was vexed with you at first, but I'm not so cakey as to not know a rum gentleman when I see one. Mick blew smoke. You are a clever one, he said admittingly. You talk blamey like an angel. You're not fooling me, though, so you needn't deceive yourself. Still, you're just the gal I need. Now get back in bed. She did as he told her. Jove, he said, your blessed feet are two lumps of ice. Why don't you wear little slippers? He tugged at her corset with determination. Slippers and black silk stockings, he said. A gal looks very flash in bed with black silk stockings. From the far end of the glass-topped counter, one of Aaron's shopmen gave Sybil the cold eye, standing haughty and tall in his neat black coat and polished boots. He knew something was up. He could smell it. Sybil waited for Mick to pay, hands folded behind her on her skirt, demure, but watching sideline from beneath the blue fringe of her bonnet. Under her skirt, wadded through the frame of her crinoline, was the shawl she'd nicked while Radley tried on top hats. Sybil had learned how to nick things. She taught herself. It simply took nerve. That was the secret. It took pluck. Look neither right nor left, just grab it. Lift your skirt, stuff, and rustle. Then stand quite straight, with a psalm-singing look, like a gentry girl. The floorman had lost interest in her. He was watching a fat man fingering watered silk braces. Sybil checked her skirt quickly. No bulge showed. A young, spotty faced clerk with ink stained thumbs set Mick's number into a countertop credit machine. Zip click, a pull on the ebony handled lever, and it was done. He gave Mick his printed purchase slip and did the parcel up in string and crisp green paper. Aaron and Son would never miss a cashmere shawl. Perhaps their account engines would when they tallied up, but the loss couldn't hurt them. Their shopping palace was too big and too rich. All those Greek columns, chandeliers of Irish crystal, a million mirrors, room after gilded room, stuffed with rubber riding boots and French milled soap, walking sticks, umbrellas, cutlery, locked glass cases crammed with silver plate and ivory brooches, and lovely wind up golden music boxes. And this was only one of a dozen in a chain. But for all of that, she knew Aaron's wasn't truly smart, not a gentry place. But couldn't you just do anything with money in England if you were clever? Someday Mr. Aaron, a whiskey old merchant Jew from Whitechapel, would have a lordship with a steam gurney waiting at the curb and his own coat of arms on the coachwork. The rad parliament wouldn't care that Mr. Aaron was no Christian. They'd given Charles Darwin a lordship, and he said that Adam and Eve were monkeys. The liftman, gotten up in a Frenchified livery, drew the rattling brass gate aside for her. Mick followed her in, his parcel tucked under his arm, and then they were descending. They emerged from Aaron's into Whitechapel Jostle. While Mick checked a street map he took from his coat, she gazed up at the shifting letters that ran the length of Aaron's frontage. A mechanical frieze, a slow sort of kinotrope for Aaron's adverts, made all of little bits of painted wood clicking about each in turn behind leaded sheets of bevel glass. Convert your manual piano, the jostling letters suggested, into a Kastner's pianola. The skyline west of Whitechapel was spiky with construction cranes, stark steel skeletons painted with red lead against the damp. Older buildings were furred with scaffolding. What wasn't being torn down, it seemed to make way for the new, was being rebuilt in its image. There was a distant huffing of excavation and a tremulous feeling below the pavement of vast machines cutting some new underground line. But now Mick turned left without a word and walked away, his hat cocked to one side, his checkered trouser legs flashing under the long hem of his greatcoat. She had to hurry to match his step. A ragged boy with a numbered tin badge was swooping mucky snow from the crossing. Mick tossed him a penny without breaking stride and headed down the lane called Butcher Row. She caught up and took his arm, past red and white carcasses dangling from their black iron books, beef and mutton and veal, and thick men in their stained aprons crying their goods. London women crowded there in scores, wicker baskets on their arms, servants, cooks, respectable wives with men at home. A red-faced, squinting butcher lurched in front of Sybil with a double handful of blue meat. "Hello, pretty missus. Buy your gentleman my nice kidneys for pie?" Sybil ducked her head and walked around him. Parked barrows crowded the curb, where costers stood bellowing, their velveteen coats set off with buttons of brass or pearl. Each had his numbered badge, though fully half the numbers were slang, Mick claimed, as slang as the costers' weights and measures. There were blankets and baskets spread on neatly chalked squares on the paving, and Mick was telling her of ways the costers had to plump out shrunken fruit and weave dead eels in with live. She smiled at the pleasure he seemed to take in knowing such things, while hawkers yelped about their brooms and soap and candles, and a scowling organ grinder cranked two-handed at his symphony machine, filling the street with a fast, springy racket of bells, piano wire, and steel. Mick stopped beside a wooden trestle table kept by a squint-eyed window in bombazine, the stump of a clay pipe protruding from her thin lips. Arrayed before her were numerous vials of some viscous looking substance Sybil took to be a patent medicine, for each was pasted with a blue slip of paper bearing the blurred image of a savage red Indian. And what would this be, mother? Mick inquired, tapping one red waxed cork with a gloved finger. Rock oil, mister, she said, relinquishing the stem of her pipe, much as they call Barbados tar. Her drawling accent grated on the ear, but Sybil felt a pang of pity. How far the woman was from whatever outlandish place she'd once called home. Really, Mick asked. It wouldn't be Texian. Healthful balm, the widow said, from nature's secret spring, the bloom of health and life to man will bring. Skimmed by the savage Seneca from the waters of Pennsylvania's great oil creek, mister. 3 pennies the vial and a guaranteed cure-all. The woman was peering up at Mick now with a queer expression, her pale eyes screwed tight in nests of wrinkles as though she might recall his face. And Sybil shivered. Good day to you then, mother, Mick said with a smile that somehow reminded Sybil of a vice detective she'd known, a sandy little man who worked Leicester Square and Soho, the Badger, the girls called him. What is it? She asked, taking Mick's arm as he turned to go. What is it she's selling? Rock oil, Mick said, and she caught his sharp glance back at the hunched black figure. The general tells me it bubbles from the ground in Texas. Sybil was curious. Is it a proper cure-all then? Never mind, he said, and here's an end to chat. He was glancing bright-eyed down the lane. I see one, and you know what to do. Sybil nodded and began to pick her way through the market crowd toward the man Mick had seen. He was a ballad seller, lean and hollow-cheeked, his hair long and greasy under a tall hat wrapped in bright polka dot fabric. He held both his arms bent, hands knotted as if in prayer, the sleeves of his rumpled jacket heavy with long, rustling cures of sheet music. Railway to heaven, ladies and gents, the ballad seller chanted, a veteran patterer. Of truth divine the rails are made, and on the rock of ages laid, the rails are fixed in chains of love, firm as the throne of God above. Lovely tune, and only tuppence, miss. Do you have the Raven of St. Jacinto? Sybil asked. I can get that. I can get it, the seller said. And what's that then? About the great battle in Texas, the great general. The ballad seller arched his brows. His eyes were blue and crazily bright, with hunger, perhaps, or religion, or gin. One of your Crimea generals, then, a Frenchie, this Mr. Jacinto. No, Miss Sybil said, and gave him a pitying smile. General Houston, Sam Houston of Texas. I do want that song, most particular. I buy my publications fresh this afternoon, and I'll look for your song for you. Sure, miss. I shall want at least 5 copies for my friends, Sybil said. 10 pence will get you 6. 6, then, and this afternoon at this very spot. Just as you say, ma'am. The seller touched the brim of his hat. Sybil walked away into the crowd. She had done it. It was not so bad. She felt she could get used to it. Perhaps it was a good tune, too, one that people would enjoy when the balladman was forced to sell the copies. Mick sidled up suddenly at her elbow. Not bad, Mick allowed, reaching into the pocket of his greatcoat like magic to produce an apple turnover, still hot, flaking sugar, and wrapped in greasy paper. Thank you, she said, startled but glad, for she'd been thinking of stopping, hiding, and fetching out the stolen shawl, but Mick's eyes had been on her every moment. She hadn't seen him, but he'd been watching. That was the way he was. She wouldn't forget again. They walked together and apart all down Somerset and then through the vast market of Petticoat Lane, lit as evening drew on with a host of lights, a glow of gas mantles, the white glare of carbide, filthy grease lamps, tallow dips twinkling among the foodstuffs proffered from the stalls. The hubbub was deafening here, but she delighted Mick by gulling 3 more ballad sellers. In a great, bright, Whitechapel gin palace with glittering gold-peppered walls, flaring with fishtail gas jets, Sybil excused herself and found a lady's convenience. There, safe within a wrecking stall, she fetched the shawl out. So soft it was, and such a lovely violet color, too, one of the strange new dyes clever people made from coal. She folded the shawl neatly and stuffed it through the top of her corset so it rested safe. Then out to join her keeper again, finding him seated at a table. He brought her a noggin of honey gin. She sat beside him. Well, you did well, girl, he said, and slid the little glass toward her. The place was full of Crimean soldiers on furlough, Irishmen with street drabs hanging on them, growing red-nosed and screechy on gin. No barmaids here, but big bruiser Hollyrock bartenders in white aprons with mill knocker clubs behind the bar. Gin's a whore's drink, Mick. Everybody likes gin, he said, and you're no whore, Sybil. Dollymop, bobtail. She looked at him sharply. What else did you call me then? You're with Dandy Mick now, he said. He leaned his chair back, jabbing his gloved thumbs through the armholes of his waistcoat. You're an adventuress. An adventuress? Bloody right. He straightened, and here's to you. He sipped his gin twist, rolled it over his tongue with an unhappy look, and swallowed. Never mind, dear. They're cut with this turpentine, or I'm a Jew. And he stood up. They left. She hung up on his arm, trying to slow his pace. Adventurer, that's what you are then, eh, Mr. Mick Radley? So I am, Sybil, he said softly, and you're to be my apprentice. So you do as you're told in the proper humble spirit, learn the tricks of craft, and someday you join the union, the guild. Like my father, you want to make a play of that, Mick, who he was and who I am? No, Mick said flatly. He was old-fashioned. He's nobody now. Sybil smirked. They let us wicked girls into this fancy guild of yours, do they, Mick? It's a knowledge guild, he said soberly. The bosses, the big uns, they can take all manner of things away from us with their bloody laws and factories and courts and banks. They can make the world to their pleasure. They can take away your home and kin and even the work you do. Mick shrugged angrily, his lean shoulders denting the heavy fabric of his great coat, and even rob a hero's daughter of her virtue. If I'm not too old in speaking of it, he pressed her hand against his sleeve, a hard, trapping grip. But they can't ever take what you know, can they, Sybil? They can't ever take that. Sybil heard Hetty's footsteps in the hall outside her room and the rattle of Hetty's keys at the door. She let the serenade die down with a high-pitched drone. Hetty tugged the snowflaked woolen bonnet from her head, shrugging free from her navy cloak. She was another of Mrs. Winterhalter's girls, a big-boned, raucous brunette from Devon who drank too much but was sweet in her way and always kind to Toby. Sybil folded away the china-handled crank and lowered the cheap instrument's scratched lid. I was practicing. Mrs. Winterhalter wants me to sing next Thursday. Bother the old drab, Hetty said. Thought this was your night out with Mr. C, or is it Mr. K? Hetty stamped warmth into her feet before the narrow little hearth, then noticed in the lamplight the scattering of shoes and hat boxes from Aaron and Son. My word, she said, and smiled, her broad mouth pinched a bit with envy. A new beau, is it? You're so lucky, Sybil Jones. Perhaps, Sybil sipped her hot lemon cordial, tilting her head back to relax her throat. Hetty winked. Winterhalter doesn't know about this one, does she? Sybil shook her head and smiled. Hetty would not tell. Do you know anything about Texas, Hetty? A country in America, Hetty said readily. French own it, don't they? Well, that's Mexico. Would you like to go to a Kinotrope show, Hetty? The former president of Texas is lecturing. I have tickets for free for the taking. When? Saturday. I'm dancing then, Hetty said. Perhaps Mandy would go. She blew warmth into her fingers. Friend of mine comes by late tonight. Wouldn't trouble you, would it? No, Sybil said. Mrs. Winterhalter had a strict rule against any girl keeping company with men in her room. It was a rule Hetty often ignored, as if daring the landlord to peach on her. Since Mrs. Winterhalter chose to pay the rent directly to the landlord, Mr. Cairns, Sybil seldom had called to speak to him and less with his sullen wife, a thick-ankled woman with a taste for dreadful hats. Cairns and his wife had never informed against Hetty, though Sybil was not sure why, for Hetty's room was next to theirs, and Hetty made a shameful racket when she brought men home. Foreign diplomats, mostly men with odd accents, and to judge by the noise, beastly habits. You can carry on singing if you like, Hetty said, and knelt before the ash covered fire. You've a fine voice. Mustn't let your gifts go to waste. She began to feed individual coals to the hearth, shivering. A dire chill seemed to enter the room then through the cracked casement of one of the nailed up windows. And for a strange passing moment, Sybil felt a distinct presence in the air, a definite sense of observation, of eyes fixed upon her from another realm. She thought of her dead father. Learn the voice, Sybil. Learn to speak. It's all we have that can fight them, he told her. This in the last few days before his arrest, when it was clear that the Rads had won again, clear to everyone perhaps save Walter Gerard. She had seen then, with heart-crushing clarity, the utter magnitude of her father's defeat. His ideals would be lost, not just misplaced, but utterly expunged from history, to be crushed again and again like the carcass of a mongrel dog under the racketing wheels of an express train. Learn to speak, Sybil. It's all we have. Read to me, Hetty asked. I'll make tea. Very well. In her spotty, scattered life with Hetty, reading aloud was one of the little rituals they had passed for domesticity. Sybil took up the day's illustrated London news from the deal table, settled her crinoline about her in the creaking, damp-smelling armchair, and squinted at a front-page article. It concerned itself with dinosaurs. The Rads were mad for these dinosaurs, it seemed. Here was an engraving of a party of 7, led by Lord Darwin, all peering intently at some indeterminate object embedded in a coalface in Thuringia. Sybil read the caption aloud, showed the picture to Hetty. A bone. The thing in the coal was a monstrous bone, as long as a man was tall. She shuddered. Turning the page, she encountered an artist's view of the creature as it might have looked in life, a monstrosity with twin rows of angry, triangular saw teeth along its humped spine. It seemed the size of an elephant, at least, though its evil little head was scarcely larger than a hound's. Hetty poured the tea. Reptiles held sway across the whole of the earth, eh? She quoted and threaded her needle. I don't believe a bloody word of it. Why not? They're the bones of bloody giants out of Genesis. That's what the clergy say, isn't it? Sybil said nothing. So interesting that the maid or one of the girls is like, those dinosaur bones that we're taught about in school, those are actually the bones of giants from biblical times. Neither supposition struck her as the more fantastic. She turned to a second article, this one in praise of Her Majesty's artillery in the Crimea. She found an engraving of 2 handsome subalterns admiring the operation of a long-range gun. The gun itself, its barred stout as a foundry stack, looked fit to make short work of all Lord Wynne's dinosaurs. Sybil's attention, however, was held by an inset view of the gunnery engine. The intricate nest of interlocking gearwork possessed a queer beauty like some kind of baroquely fabulous wallpaper. Have you anything that needs darning? Hetty asked. No, thank you. Read some adverts then, Hetty advised. I do hate that war humbug. There was Haviland China from Limoges, France, or Limoges, France, I don't know. Vin Mariana, the French tonic, with a testimonial from Alexandre Dumas and descriptive book portraits and autographs of celebrities upon application to the promises in Oxford Street. Silver electro silicone polish. It never scratches, never wears. It is unlike others. The new departure bicycle bell. It has a tone all its own. Dr. Bailey's Lithia water cures Bright's disease and the gouty diatheses. Gurney's Regent Pocket steam engine intended for use with domestic sewing machines. This last held Sybil's attention, but not through its promise to operate a machine at double the old speed at a cost of 1/2 penny per hour. Here was an engraving of the tastefully ornamented little boiler to be heated by gas or paraffin. Charles Egremont had purchased one of these for his wife. It came equipped with a rubber tube intended to vent the waste steam when jammed under a convenient sash window. But Sybil had been delighted to hear that it had turned Madame's drawing room into a Turkish bath. When the paper was finished, Sybil went to bed. She was woken around midnight by the savage, rhythmic crunching of Hetty's bed springs. Okay, so maybe about 10 more pages. It was dim in the Garrick Theater, dusty and cold, with the pit and the balcony and the racks of shabby seats. But it was pitch dark below the stage where Mick Radley was, and it smelled of damp and lime. Actually, we're almost at the 1 hour mark. So maybe just a couple more pages. Mick's voice echoed up from under her feet. Ever seen the innards of a kinotrope, Sybil? I saw one once backstage, she said, at a music hall in Bethnal Green. I knew the fellow what worked it, a clacker cove. A sweetheart? Mick asked. His echoing voice was sharp. No, Sybil told him quickly. I was singing a bit, but it scarcely paid. She heard the sharp click of his repeating match. It caught on the third attempt, and he lit a stub of candle. Come down, he commanded. Don't stand there like a goose, showing off your ankles. Sybil lifted her crinoline with both hands and picked her way uneasily down the steep, damp stairs. Mick reached up to grope behind a tall stage mirror, a great gleaming sheet of silvered glass, with a wheeled pedestal and only gears and worn wooden cranks. He retrieved a cheap black portmanteau of proofed canvas, placed it carefully on the floor before him, and squatted to undo the flimsy tin clasps. He removed a stack of perforated cards bound with a ribbon of red paper. There were other bundles in the bag as well, and Sybil saw, and something else, a gleam of polished wood. He handled the cards gently, like a Bible. Safe as houses, he said. You just disguise them, you see. Write something stupid on the wrapper, like Temperance Lecture, parts 1, 2, and 3. Then coves never think to steal. Then coves never think to steal him, or even load them up and look. Hefting the thick block, he riffled its edge with his thumb so that it made a sharp, crisp sound like a gambler's new deck. I put a deal of capital in these, he said. Weeks of work from the best keno hands in Manchester. Exclusively to my design, I might point out. 'Tis a lovely thing, girl, quite artistic in its way. You'll soon see. Closing the portmanteau, he stood. He carefully slid the bundle of cards into his coat pocket, then bent over a crate and tugged out a thick glass tube. He blew dust from the tube, then gripped one end of it with a special pair of pincers. The glass cracked open with an airtight pop. There was a fresh block of lime in the tube. Mick slid it loose, humming to himself. He tamped the lime gently into the socket of a limelight burner, a great dish-shaped thing of sooty iron and gleaming tin. Then he turned a horse tap, sniffed a bit, nodded, turned a second tap, and set the candle to it. Sybil yelped as a vicious flash sheeted into her eyes. Mick chuckled at her over the hiss of blazing gas, dots of hot blue dazzle drifting before her. Better, he remarked. He aimed the blazing limelight carefully into the stage mirror, then began to adjust its cranks. Sybil looked around, blinking. It was dank and ratty and cramped under the Garrick stage, the sort of place a dog or a pauper might die in, with torn and yellowed bills underfoot, for naughty farces like That Rascal Jack and Scamps of London. A pair of ladies' unmentionables were wadded in a corner, and from her brief unhappy days as a stage singer, she had some idea how they might have gotten there. She let her gaze follow steam pipes and taut wires to the gleam of the Babbage engine, a small one, a kinotrope model, no taller than Sybil herself. Unlike everything else in the Garrick, the engine looked in very good repair, mounted on 4 mahogany blocks. The floor and ceiling above and beneath it had been carefully scoured and whitewashed. Steam calculators were delicate things, temperamental, so she'd heard. Better not to own one than to cherish it, and in the stray glare from mixed limelight, dozens of knobbed brass columns gleamed, set top and bottom into solid sockets, bored through polished plates with shining levers, ratchets, 1,000 steel gears cut bright and fine. It smelled of linseed oil. Looking at it this close and this long made Sybil feel quite odd, hungry almost, or greedy in a queer way she might feel about a fine, lovely horse, let's say. She wanted not to own it exactly, but to possess it somehow. So Mick took her elbow suddenly from behind and she started, "It's a lovely thing, isn't it?" "Yes, it's lovely." Mick still held her arm. Slowly, he put his other gloved hand against her cheek and inside her bonnet. Then he lifted her chin with his thumb, staring into her face. "It makes you feel something, doesn't it?" His rapt voice frightened her, his eyes underlit with glare. "Yes, Mick," she said obediently and quickly. "I do feel it. Something." He tugged her bonnet loose to hang at her neck. "You're not frightened of it, Sybil, are you? Not with Dandy Mick here, holding you. You feel a little special frisson. You'll learn to like that feeling, and we'll make a clacker of you." "Can I do that? Truly? Can a girl do that?" Mick laughed. Have you never heard of Lady Ada Byron, then? The Prime Minister's daughter and the very queen of engines." He let her go and swung both her arms wide, coat swinging open, a showman's gesture. "Ada Byron, true friend and disciple of Babbage himself, Lord Charles Babbage, father of the difference engine and the Newton of our modern age." She gaped at him. "But Ada Byron is a ladyship." "Well, you'd be surprised who our Lady Ada knows," Mick declared, plucking a block of cards from his pocket and peeling off its paper jacket. "Oh, not to drink tea with among the diamond squad at her garden parties, but Ada's what you'd call fast in her own mathematical way." And he paused. "That's not to say that Ada is the best, you know. I know clacking coves in the STEAM Intellect Society that make even Lady Ada look a bit tardy, but Ada possesses genius. Do you know what that means, Sybil, to possess genius?" "What?" Sybil said, hating the giddy surety in his voice. "Do you know how analytical I can never pronounce that right. Someone tell me. Um, Watching a fly on the ceiling. A million fellows before him had watched flies on the ceiling, but it took Rene Descartes to make a science of it. Now engineers use what he discovered every day, but if it weren't for him, we'd still be blind to it." "What if flies matter to anyone?" Sybil demanded. Ada had an insight once that ranked with Rene's discovery. "No one has found a use for it as yet. It's what they call pure mathematics," Mick laughed. "Pure. You know what that means, Sybil? It means they can't get it to run." He rubbed his hands together, grinning. "No one can get it to run." Mick's glee was wearing at her nerves. "I thought you hated lordships." "I do hate lordly privilege. What's not earned, fair and square and level," he said. "But Lady Ada lives and swears by the power of gray matter and not her blue blood." He slotted the cards into a silver tray by the side of the machine. Sorry. By the side of the machine, then spun and caught her wrist. "Your father's dead, girl. 'Tis not that I mean to hurt you by saying it, but the Luddites are dead as cold ashes. Oh, we marched and ranted for the Knights of Labor and such. Fine talk, girl, but Lord Charles Babbage made blueprints while we made pamphlets, and his blueprints built this world." Mick shook his head. "The Byron men, the Babbage men, the industrial radicals, they own Great Britain. They own us, girl. The very globe is at their feet. Europe, America, everywhere. The House of Lords is packed, top to bottom with rads. Queen Victoria won't stir a finger without a nod from the savants and capitalists." He pointed at her. "And it's no use fighting that anymore. And you know why? Because the rads do play fair, or fair enough to manage. And you can become one of them if you're clever. You can't get clever men to fight such a system as it makes too much sense to 'em." Mick thumbed his chest. But that don't mean that you and I are out in the cold and lonely. It only means we have to think faster with our eyes peeled and our ears open. Mick struck a prize fighter's pose, elbows bent, fists poised, knuckles up before his face. Then he flung his hair back and grinned at her. So that is where I will leave it, because we are at the 1 hour mark. So this has been so far the difference engine, and I'm still in the first iteration. I am going to get rid of this screen and come back on here. So I'll be back next Friday, I hope. I'm pretty sure that I'll be around next Friday to continue the difference engine. I hope you liked what I've read so far. I noticed there's some like things that I didn't adjust in the background, which we normally do. So we're actually we've got big plans, and so I've got to continue packing and all that stuff. So thank you for joining today, and we'll see you next Friday as I continue this book, The Difference Engine. Check it out. You can read about it on Wikipedia. You can look it up. You can buy it from thriftbooks.com and read it yourself. So I hope you've enjoyed what I've read so far, and I'll pick it up again next week. Okay. Talk to you later. Have a great weekend. Bye.
You can help us continue our work by becoming a patron at patreon.com/bookofhours, or leave us a one-time donation at paypal.me/bookofhours. Or you can use Cash App. Thank you.